Good evening, fellow Toastmasters and distinguished guests. I'm going to give a speech, and the speech is called To Contribute a Verse. So this speech comes from a line of a poem that I really love. And I know I quote poetry a lot, so there it goes again. But this poem is by Walt Whitman. He's my favorite poet of all time. And the poem is called O Me, O Life. So I'm going to recite it and take it from there. So the poem goes as follows. O me, O life, of the questions of these recurring, of the endless trains, the faithless, of the cities filled with the foolish, of myself forever reproaching myself, for who can be more foolish than I, and who more faithless, of eyes that vainly crave delight, of the objects mean, of the struggle ever renewed, of the poor results of all, of the plodding and sordid crowds I see around me, of the empty and useless years of the rest, with the rest me intertwined. The question, O me, so sad and recurring, what good amid these, O me, O life? Answer, that you are here, and that life exists in identity, that the powerful play goes on, and you may contribute a verse. Wonderful poem. And as you can tell, I took the line, you may contribute a verse from Whitman. But I want to explore what he means by that. What does he mean by you may contribute a verse? Well, I think he means that we go throughout our lives believing that we have to follow a script that was written for us. We're mere actors of a play, and our lines are written for us. And we have to recite our lines with clear precision, or else we're going to be called out as being bad actors. We have to follow the script as follows. We have to go to school, then we have to work, and then in between or at the end of work, we have to get married. And then you have a family, and then you retire, and then you die. This is a script that everyone plays. And this is a script that we all subconsciously think that we all have to do. But what if I were to tell you that we can write a verse within that script that can be wholly ours, that can be something that's unique to us? We can write our own play that can be uniquely something that we can contribute to the world. Well, this is what I want to say, is that I have 4 steps of contributing the verse and how to do so. And I like to give you these 4 steps and try to convince you if I can. If not, it's okay. Okay, the first step is that we have to reject the delusion of victimhood. Okay? This is a step that we all miss because we believe that we're victims of the world, that someone has done something to us, and therefore we are unable to make our lives as we want. But that is a delusion. Victimhood is a product of the mind. It's not a product of reality. It's something we choose to do. A person can make the best of their situation and thereby becoming a survivor and a victor rather than a victim. For as Aristotle said this in the Nicomachean Ethics himself, that the happy man can never be miserable because a happy man makes the best of his circumstances. Like a shoemaker makes the best of his best hides, or the general makes the best of his soldiers in the battlefield. You make the best with them in the dark corners of your soul than a soldier to fight in the battlefield. We don't want to look inside ourselves. There's too much pain involved. We'd rather die than to do that. But in order to have a verse to contribute, you have to do that self-examination. Because as Socrates said, the unexamined life is not worth living. If we don't examine ourselves, we aren't living. So courage is needed. The last is going to be confidence. We build confidence gradually and over time. Confidence is something that we have to cultivate over time. One example is history. We saw in the early stages of World War II, Germany was invincible. Between 1939 and 1941, they didn't lose a battle. They took over Poland in a month. They took over France in 3 weeks. The Germans thought they won the war as soon as France fell. But lo and behold, the Allies did not give up. They fought battle after battle, improving after every battle. And then it came to a point where they were on the counteroffensive and the Germans were losing. And even though they won the battles early, the Allies won the war. because they didn't give up and they built confidence over time to defeat the Germans, who at one point was invincible, but they were beatable. And I believe that these 4 steps are what allow us to have a verse. Now, I want to give a story about who exemplifies this the most. And I think a story that's very fitting is our president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Now, Roosevelt was a patrician. He was a man who was of great wealth and great means. He was well educated. He came from a family of politicians. His cousin was Theodore Roosevelt, 27th President of the United States, cowboy hunter, extraordinary man. But in 1921, when he was 39 years old, FDR contracted polio. He couldn't walk without assistance. This man, who once had servants who would look to him as invincible, this man who had all the charisma and confidence in the world, who had all the ego in the world as well, couldn't walk without assistance. He realized that he wasn't invincible. He realized that he was fallible and that he was a person who needed help from other people. So what did he do? Well, it took a while. From 1921 to 1924, he was in Great Depression, couldn't get out of bed, was angry at the world, was angry at his fate, that something like this can strike him and take away the opportunity for him to be president of the United States. But he didn't give up. In 1924, he went to a Democratic convention. He got a few applauses, but it wasn't enough to stir up his confidence. But then the next presidential election in 28, he got so much applause and so much praise for his charisma, for his leadership, for his vision, that the Democratic Party pushed him to be governor of New York. He ran for governor of New York and he won. In 1928, he was governor. The next year was the Great Depression. Every governor in the United States struggled to contain the Great Depression, but not him. He was so good in mitigating the effects of the Great Depression that they pushed him to be president of the United States. In 32, he ran against Herbert Hoover. Herbert Hoover had mishaps in handling the country, and lo and behold, he became president of the United States, a man who cannot walk by his own volition, a man who needs help walking with other people, a man who lives on braces, a man who seems impotent, became the most powerful man in the world at the time. And not only was he president, he became the best president of the 20th century. This is to show that FDR exemplified all the features. He did not see himself as a victim. He made the best with what he had. He knew he was crippled, but that didn't stop him from understanding that he can still achieve his goals. He had the humility to understand that he needed help, that he couldn't do it by himself, and therefore he had to look for other people to help him. He had the courage to look at himself and look at the weaknesses that he couldn't escape. He couldn't walk. He couldn't do the things normal people did. So he accepted his limitations. And then he had the confidence, because from one series event to another, he built the confidence to achieve his goal to become president. Folks, this is to say that this is how to contribute a verse in the world. These 4 steps. And we've seen it with the greatest president of the 20th century. How much more can we do as ourselves? And I wish that for every one of you in this room, that you all can write your own verses in this own life and make it the life you want to make it. Thank you very much.